May 25th, 2024. I didn't expect to get into this topic again this quick, but there have been, in the last day or so, there's been some recent developments which I think have kind of caused this to happen. That's getting back to the situation respect to the Ukraine war and what's happening there. Um, there's a lot of things out there, a lot of issues that are playing around, and I'm kind of looking at the theme of, are we running into some really perhaps serious risks that we shouldn't be taking? And here's the thing I'm looking at. There's a lot of indicators out there that look to me to be kind of troubling. And at first you kind of go, well, what levels of risk is going on? One of the problems I have right now is that if we compare the current situation of many in the past, such as, say, the Cuban Missile Crisis, which I think is as close an analogy as there is, because you have a situation where the conflict is right in the immediate area of a major power who doesn't like what the exterior power is doing. In the case of the Cuban Missile Crisis, it was the Soviet Union placing medium-range missiles in Cuba, which would threaten all of our Air Force bases and our command and control. And so that led to the showdown, which, as we all know historically, with Kennedy and everything. And this one, of course, is over the issue of us attempting to drive Russia back out of Ukraine, and the various actions that are occurring in order to do that. Now, and I think, again, this is an event that's happening in the immediate sphere of influence of Russia, which is, I think, has got them a bit on edge. Now, so, and another development that's occurred here is that, for some time, as far as the nuclear issue, and I think that's one of the questions we always raise is, when you're dealing with nuclear war, even if the probability of it happening is low, that's a case where you need to change your behavior. It's sort of like if you put $2 into a lottery ticket hoping to win the Mega Millions or the Powerball, you have an almost certain chance of losing the $2, but you have a great chance of, you have a very minimal chance, of getting significantly wealthy, right? So it might be worth losing the $2 for. Many people think so, although it's statistically a bad move. But here, if we talk about nuclear war, if there's a 1% chance, increase of 1% chance, let's say, if a nuclear war occurring, considering the level of damage that is like something would lead to, let's say, 100 million deaths. A 1% chance means an expectation value of 1 million deaths. So that's pretty serious, as an example. It's a crude way of looking at it, but okay, that's the way I'm presenting it. So early on, when we've had a lot of people in Russia making some really absurd nuclear threats, as we know. We might bomb London, we might bomb Berlin, we might bomb Paris, we might bomb, that sort of nonsense. Which is, and that was pretty much dismissed. And one of the things, even when they're considering the possibility of a tactical nuclear weapons being used, essentially what we were being told pretty much by the spokespeople from the Defense Department and so forth is, we see no sign of any activity with respect to those weapons, that they're in their storage areas and nothing's being done. It's just a bunch of talk. Okay, that's what we've been told, if you recall. Well, now that's not the situation. They're actually involving in drills involving the use of the tactical nuclear weapons. In fact, I just saw a video today, which a little 2 minutes, but which showed that they were basically dealing with the two different variants of Iskander, the ballistic missile variant and the cruise missile variant. And I think the other was the Kinzhal, which has a nuclear variant also. And they were, I guess, going through training on how these would be done and so forth. So if these are the actual weapons that we're talking about, that looks like you can't say nothing's being done with them now. And it's also interesting to note that these are not old artillery shells like a lot of the people in the British media were liking to say. These are up-to-date systems. I don't think that an old warhead would really fit on these new missiles. So pretty much it has to be designed to work with the missile, in terms of dimensions and the speed at which it will be delivered and all the fusing. In other words, these are not old they may not work devices. These are more or less modern, up-to-date ones that probably very much will work. And so I think this is a bit of an alarming development, frankly, that this is happening. I suppose this is being done just to tell the French and other NATO countries, you really don't want to get involved in this. But there's all other possibilities here too, particularly if enough negative things happen from the Russian point of view. Okay, so I just think that's a reason to be careful. Now, if you look at things like what happened with Israel on October the 7th, in fact, many of the people saw what was going on. Many of the apparently female people on the front lines were reporting these activities of preparation, but the higher-ups ignored them. Well, October 7th, it happened to Israel, see? So my point is these things shouldn't be ignored to the degree that they seem to be by a lot of people. I'm not saying that anything is going to happen tomorrow or the next day or the next month even, necessarily. But I'm saying that movement is going in a direction which isn't good. And so I wanted to kind of bring that idea up. By the way, if you like these videos, please give me a like. We want more subscriptions as always. And of course, those that find us on social media, but are members of Rumble, you can always subscribe on Rumble because I post the videos there too. So yeah, so I think that's one thing. Now, another development that happened very recently, which I think itself is very serious, that does increase the risk of a nuclear conflict potentially down the road, is that one aspect of keeping, in fact, even tactical nuclear war limited, is that the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to attack the command and control, particularly the national command and control, and you don't want to attack the early warning systems, because if you end up blinding an enemy while there's actual nuclear weapons potentially in use, that's going to have a tendency to have the decision making go in the direction of more extreme action rather than more limited action. Because you don't know, you assume the worst. Sort of the prisoner's dilemma concept, as it's called in game theory. And so I think that this is not a good development. Fairly recently, the Ukrainians used a drone and attacked a radar system, which, from what I can tell, is part of the Russian strategic early warning system. Just like in the United States, we have radars in Alaska and Greenland and other places. The big phased array radar up, I think it's in Dakota, North or South Dakota, I forget, one of them, that look outward to detect any incoming missiles. And the idea is that first the satellites detect the launch from the infrared, of the rocket's exhaust, but then they go dark when the warheads are flying through space, and it's called mid-course. But then as they come in, the radars then detect and characterize the attack. And it's that those two different warnings. That's why I was criticizing that lady Jacobson, how she was characterizing it. It's the second confirmation and the characterization attack that then leads to a situation where one might decide to retaliate immediately or not. And so by trying to plink away at the Russian strategic warning system, if this thing goes a little hotter than it is now, it increases the chance that they may be worried about a Triton submarine out there somewhere coming in from a certain angle and them not seeing it. You see what I mean? That could lead to a variety of bad things, including the idea of maybe delegating the launch authority to a command center with some generals in it, that if they lose contact with Moscow, they'll act on their own. Or I'm not saying they're going to do that. I don't know. But that's one of the kind of things that could come from losing your ability to have early warning. And so I'm just saying I think that is a very reckless action. Now, a pro-Russian source I heard about was commenting on this, and they're taking it like this was a deliberate action that the United States ordered. Okay. I'm not so sure that's the case. I'm not sure that our mad dog over there is on a good leash, frankly. The attacks on the oil refineries have been criticized publicly by the United States. I don't know whether or not maybe that's just us covering our rear. In fact, we're saying, Zelensky, go do it. That could be true. Or Maybe Zelensky's just doing it on his own because he's not getting all the weapons that he wants or something, or the freedom to use them the way he wants from us. So he's got his own little drones he's making. And so he goes ahead and does things like this. They have been attacking Ingalls Air Base, which I would say be analogous to somebody in a hostile power attacking, say, Barksdale down in Louisiana, where our B-52s, which are the cruise missile carriers, would be based. In other words, this is the sort of thing that's going on over there, that this is getting beyond the kind of things that would be attacking targets that are basically, tactical air bases or surface-to-air missiles or ammo depots or things that are directly related to the conventional war that's being waged in Ukraine. These are more about the actual Russian strategic posture. And I think that could lead to a decision at some point. Remember, those kind of things are part of their doctrine of where they might do something. And one way to speed up the outcome of the Ukraine war would be to use tactical nuclear weapons. I'm not saying they're going to do it, but we don't want to do anything that would make them want to think that way. Because, for instance, you have one of these cities, not the one that's around their border, but let's say the one that's that they're fighting, that's in front of the Bakhmut, something Yar or something like that. Anyway, they're fighting on that. It's been going on weeks, and they're having trouble. All you do is pull back and drop a 50-kiloton bomb on it, and problem solved. And the right kind of bomb, that is one that doesn't have a lot of uranium in the secondary, but basically is you sacrifice half the yield in order to get the less fallout and do it optimal air burst on a day it's not raining, and you can drive right through the next day pretty much. And we're dealing with a country that had its troops digging foxholes in the exclusion zone around Chernobyl, so yes, they might do that. And all of a sudden, they're moving a lot faster now. And EMP, might knock out all the local drones. And, I'm saying we don't know. I'm just saying that I'm just giving you examples that if they decide to speed things up, that could happen too. If they're really feeling that they're losing too much assets. So those are the kind of things I'm finding are disconcerting. And I don't think the probability has gone to a high probability, but it's maybe climbing. Now we have another thing that's just happening, which would seem to be a little bit on the countervailing side, except for one thing. Before you take an action, what would you do? You would probably try to see if you can avoid it. And so now there's some talk that Russia is willing to agree to some kind of a freeze in place, that basically if they get to keep what they've already taken, that they would be willing to quit fighting or something. That's being floated as a feeler somehow. Or is it a propaganda thing that's being raised by us, our side, for some political purpose? I don't know. It's said to be coming out of Moscow. So maybe maybe there's a squeeze play going on here. You start playing around with tactical nukes, and you also talk about, could we freeze this in place? And if you say no, okay. I'm just saying, again, low probability, but do we really want something like this to happen? And I think that this is an example to me why this is incredibly dangerous. And unlike the situation in the Cuban Missile Crisis, where our government was led by the best and brightest, more or less, well, they may not have been that bright, but they were very competent people relative to what we have now. I mean, you can't compare John Kennedy at the age of, 44 or something like he would have been at the time, versus Biden at 80, whatever he is now, and the mental states of the two of them. And I'm not particularly impressed by the expertise of their national security advisor or their Secretary of State either. I don't think any of these people are really that competent. So this incompetence in a potential showdown of this sort could lead to an absolute catastrophe. And that's one reason why I think that, although, some people don't necessarily address this thing quite the way they should, I mean, like MTG, her heart's kind of in the right place, but the way she's saying it is all off, and she makes a fool of herself. But the point is, there is a real reason why we ought to quit cheering on this thing. Like every time somebody thinks of something more aggressive to do to Russia, everybody's like, let's go do it. I think maybe we shouldn't go do it. Because let's face it, the one way Russia could get real credibility very quick would be a nuclear strike against some target in Ukraine. Just a fact. It's sort of like, some terrorist is waving a gun around or something and people may not take it too seriously, the first person he shoots, people take it very seriously at that point. And I think in this scenario, that this is a real danger here. We don't know what they're really thinking. This could all be a deception. I don't, right now they're also saying at the same time they put out this supposed peace deal, they're also saying that Zelensky is an illegitimate president and they have nobody that's legitimate to negotiate with. Like I said, so it's, and of course now we have that offensive that in the Kharkiv region, which was talked about, and it looks to me like on that one, it's accomplishing its primary purpose, which is it's drawing a fair number of Ukrainian military units that otherwise would be deployed on the eastern front and on the southern Zaporizhia front and on the Kherson front, is drawn some of those units up there. And even if Russia makes very little or no additional progress there, they're tying those units down up there so they're not getting in the way of wherever the major offensive is probably going. Because the one thing I said before, if you recall, is that taking the city of Kharkiv itself is not the plan. I don't, too complicated, and I don't see them, it's sort of like Stalingrad. You just don't, I don't think they would do that. So at any rate, that's the way that's my thought for this subject, and I just thought I had to say so. And these are the type of considerations that leads to a lot of my attitudes on this whole subject. By the way, I'll of course be posting this, as I said before, on both YouTube and Rumble, and the addresses of my social media account are in the description below.